talking about Shai, talking about the Nuggets, talking about the Thunder and Jokic and all of that. Maybe we might have spoken too soon, or maybe not even that we spoke too soon. Maybe the MVP race is a little more open than we're leading on to believe. I do think it's a two-man race or two-horse race since Jokic is involved with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic. But there have been a lot of straw polls and voting results and among people who are actually going to have a vote when it's time to make the call. And a lot of them are siding Nikola Jokic. And, coming off the big performance he had in the second game against the Thunder, Shai wasn't as good as he was the first time. He had an MVP performance the first time, had a 40-point game. I'm curious kind of what you're thinking, because I even said it at one point, the door might still be open. It's very much going to be who has the most MVP moments down the stretch of this season. And honestly, that could go either way. The odds might not reflect it, but I do think that it's going to come down to that because Jokic is having a historic season. He says he's playing the best basketball of his life, and he already has 3 MVPs under his belt. So it's a lot at play here.
Yeah, I think like anybody that tells you that voter fatigue isn't going to play a role in this year's MVP race would be lying because do I think that Shai should be MVP? Yes. Do I think that he deserves it? Yeah, I do. I really do. This is a guy who is averaging, like I said, 33 points per game. He's, been playing every single night at the highest level for one of the best teams in the NBA. But at the same time, Michael Malone had a point. If you were to just put these two players as player A and player B, shout out Scott Rafferty, blind resume them and put it side by side, it would be pretty hard to go against a guy that's averaging basically a 30-point triple-double. And I actually do think that I agree with Jokic that he, out of all of his MVP seasons, this might be his best season. But the reality is that voter fatigue just does play a role in these things. He's already got 3 of them. Could have made the argument that Shai should have got it last year and he didn't. Shai is playing even better this year than he was last year. I mean, let's not forget to mention this is also Shai's best season of his career. And now it's all right, well, do we give Jokic a 4th MVP because this is if you were to stack up this season against his other MVP seasons, this is the best season of his career? Or do you give it to Shai because he didn't get it last year and he's playing the best basketball of his career? And, the Thunder are the best team in the West and he's going to lead the league in scoring. It's one of those where if I had a vote, I would vote for Shai. But if Jokic ends up winning MVP, I'm not going to bat an eye at it. And I'm not going to be oh shit, that, Shai should have won it. Jokic has done everything that he can to deserve this MVP award. It's just I don't know, man, LeBron won 4 out of 5 MVPs. Derrick Rose snuck one in the middle. He won 2 and then D Rose won 1 and then LeBron won 2. Could LeBron have won 5 straight MVPs? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. He had an argument for it. He absolutely could have. Derrick Rose just had, a ridiculous one-off season for the youngest MVP in NBA history. And I'm not saying these two situations are, apples to apples, but it is apples to oranges in the sense that Jokic has won 3 out of the last 4. And now he's, in a position to win 4 out of 5. And that puts him in extremely, extremely, extremely rare company in NBA history. I think it's Larry Bird has 4. Kareem. It's Kareem.
There's 5 guys
Larry,
with 4. It's Wilt.
5 guys with 4. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You have the list. 5. I'll let you.
I got the list in front of me. Yeah. The 5 players with 4+ MVPs, Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron have 4. Bill Russell has 5, Michael Jordan has 5, and Kareem won 6. So that's the list right there. He would become the 6th player in league history with 4+ MVPs.
And he absolutely deserves to be in the same breath as all of those guys. He's one of the greatest players of all time. But, it's hard to phrase this without making it sound like a participation award where it's just give it to Shai because Jokic already has a ton. But Shai has done everything that he can to deserve this award, and his team has been better all season and his numbers are insane. This is the best season of his career. It's just one of those situations where if it does end up going to Jokic, I don't think anybody could really raise a fist in the air and be oh, that's the wrong decision. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, exactly. And you said that point when you said, if I had a vote, I was man, let me start thinking, if I had a vote, what would I do? And I think if I had a vote, I would be glad that voting wouldn't be required for another month, because I think right now my answer is that I don't know. I was very much, even last week we were talking about it. I was Shai, and could go either way, depending on how this game goes tonight, depending on how the next week goes. I can kind of oscillate. And like you said, I won't be mad either way. And I'm very curious to see how the voters treat the situation. But when you start making the case and you do player A versus player B and talking about actual value to a team and where the Nuggets would be without Jokic, where the Thunder will be without Shai, and especially given what we talked about with their role players and the way their team is constructed is very much constructed to have him be the guy and everybody kind of fall into place. Whereas the Nuggets are constructed as like Jokic, everything works and revolves around him and nothing goes if it isn't for him. Those answers, those two descriptors sound the same, but they're inherently a little bit different with the way I think about it. I'm curious, and you mentioned it already. One thing I mentioned and thought about was, and this ties into what we talked about earlier. Man, this is feeling like a little like 2023 when Embiid snuck in and got that one in the middle. And I think back then, Jokic, we were saying the same thing, right? He was better than he was statistically the previous years. But I think voters were like, man, I'm not going to give this guy 3 MVPs in a row. Something that only I think Bird and I think it was Wilt and maybe somebody else, maybe Russell got 3 in a row. But I know Bird, I know those guys with the multiple. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. But the guys who got the 3 in a row, I'm not going to do what they did without him winning a championship. He goes off and wins a championship a couple months later, and now the narrative is kind of reset, kind of similar to what we're saying about these teams getting over the hump. Now that's gone, right? So that's gone. And I think that it's very interesting because of voter fatigue. And as a previous MVP winner, you kind of do yourself a disservice in a way, and that the slate isn't blank for you. You do have to build, and you have to be better than you were in your other MVP seasons. And there also can't be another worthy candidate kind of for you to be in that conversation. So I think that all of those things kind of play in together makes it really intriguing. And I think, like I said, it'll come down to, is Jokic going to have, a 50-point triple-double in this game? Is Shai going to have a 50, 60-point game in a big spot, to lead them to a much-needed win, even though when you're, up 8, 10 games in the conference, you don't really have any must-win games. But I do think that this year, more than anything, both have really good narratives. Who's going to have those MVP moments when you look back and say, this is the moment when this guy kind of snatched MVP? And I think that is to be determined.
Yeah, Shai's had some monster games down the stretch. Like, he's had 50-point games, 40-point games. And then over the weekend, we see Jokic become the first player to ever have 30, 20, 20 in a game. Like, they really are going shot for shot here. And like, as you were talking, I was thinking back to like something that I definitely said early on in the season when we talked about the MVP conversation. And that was that like Jokic is going to have to do something completely unprecedented to even be considered for MVP again, because voter fatigue was already setting in even last year. And like now here we are, like however many months later, and it's like, well, the guy is averaging basically a 30-point triple double and doing things on a nightly basis that we've never seen before. And it's like, as I'm sitting here talking, like it almost sounds like I'm talking myself out of Shai for MVP as my pick, but like you really could go either way. Like it doesn't feel like there's a wrong answer. And does that mean that it should be like co-MVPs? No, I don't think it should be co-MVPs. Like people have a vote for a reason. You got to make a decision. But like, it is one of those situations truly where I don't think that there is a wrong answer for MVP this year. And whoever wins it, you're going to look back on it and be like, damn, yeah, that was really well deserved. And it's something that like even 10 years down the line, like if Jokic ends up being the MVP and he wins his 4th, like we're going to look back on this season and be like, yeah, the guy averaged a 30-point triple double. But if Shai wins MVP, we're also going to look back on this season and be like, the Thunder won 60 something games. The guy averaged 33 points per game. He led the NBA in 50-point games, 40-point games, 30-point games, 20-point games, like showing up every single night, doing it for one of the best teams in the league. So as weird as it is to say, like you just said, with like 15 games left in the season, that it feels like it's still undecided. Like I do think, to your point, like how strong OKC finishes the season and where Denver goes from here will play a role, because like team success inevitably makes a difference in these types of things. And as long as OKC keeps rolling, and if Denver can't find a way to beat, like they have a below 500 record against teams that are under 500. Like if they can't find a way to win some of these games against teams they're going to be going up against in the playoffs, that should also play a role too. So I'm curious to see how it finishes up. I'm very curious to see who ends up winning MVP. I just know that either way, one of those two players is more than deserving of the honor this year.
Yeah, 100%. And one last thought for the fact checkers listening. Larry Bird, 84, 85, 86. Wilt Chamberlain, 66, 67, 68. And Bill Russell, 61, 62, 63. So they're the three guys who won 3 MVP awards in a row.